Hello and welcome to CIO News. I am Khushbu Soni, a host for the broadcast and chief editor at CIO News. This is our exclusive interview series on the topic of zero trust security trend, an exclusive interview series with the CIOs and the CISOs powered by Zscaler. It is a recorded session and will be available on our website, that is cionews.co.in, and our CIO News LinkedIn handle. It gives me an immense pleasure in introducing my guest for today. He is Mr. Mukul Singhal, the Head of Digital and Chief Information Officer for Birlasoft. Mukul is a result-driven technology and a business leader with more than 23 years of experience and has handled responsibilities spanned across various functional areas, including P&L management, business strategy, operations, relationship management, IT, and management consulting. Mukul has extensive experience in leading large and complex engagements and managing global teams to implement governance framework, transition models to drive the culture of solution and innovation and increasing sales effectiveness. He has taken initiatives in large global programs like digital transformation, TCO analysis, has built integrated service delivery, outcome-based model, several cloud-enabled digital thread programs, and also participated in implementing IoT setup for organizations and many more. Mukul, it's an absolute pleasure to have you today on this platform.
Thank you, Khushbu. Thanks for inviting me for this discussion. I feel pleasure to be here.
Great, Mukul. I just wanted to begin with our first question on if you can talk about being a CIO and for an organization like Birlasoft, if you can just give us how your typical day looks like. If you can just talk about that, and then we can begin with the questions.
No, sure, absolutely, Khushbu. So I think it's a very important role for any organization, and for any ITES organization, it becomes very important because the expectations are more, given that we are the technology enabler and the consumer also for the same. So not only we have to ensure that how we do things better within our organization from a business perspective and technical perspective, but we need to ensure throughout that our customers which we are serving also are completely secured. There is completely uptime for them, and there is no compromise in the SLAs for them. So it becomes a kind of a dual responsibility for us to manage both internal and external while we are at this role.
Right, absolutely, and I'm pretty sure it's a role which is evolving as we go, right? There's so much to add with both business and technology being on the platter. Awesome. So my next question is, if you can talk about what are the security requirements that can be considered, for any organization before they move to digital platforms or conduct any business digitally. We've seen a lot of acceleration on digital adoption post the pandemic. So any best practices that you can share? What are the typical security requirements that can be considered?
Sure, Khushbu, because if you see today in the digital world, adoption of the technology is becoming a common denominator for any organization, because every organization has been little unimpacted or have been impacted probably with this pandemic, and everybody is looking for the agility of their business. So and the pace of the technology is rapidly changing, and hence when the technology keeps on changing, the security needs keeps evolving. So it is very important that to create a space for technologists to expand their horizons from just from a technocrats to understand that how the security concerns are being addressed. And therefore when any digital platform or the transformation is being evaluated, the way we will have to look it from a infosec perspective, that it's, if anything gets compromised, it's a business risk. So we should not just look from a technical perspective, because any risk is a business risk which can impact the business, and hence all the security requirements that we evaluate or should be evaluated should be in the context that your business should not get into jeopardy. If that fundamental is kept in mind, I think all the evaluations will fall in place when we do any for any digital platform.
Very true. I think correctly said. And if you can also talk about, there's a lot of buzz around zero trust architecture, and what are the zero trust strategies that can be incorporated to secure network application access? Talk about that.
Right. So, see, zero trust is not a technology or a product. Right. It's a strategic architecture approach that you enable your security by technology, and there is no silver bullet to just achieve it. What it does, it assumes that every user or device or system or connection is already compromised, and whether they are insiders or outside of the network. So if you see the today's focus has moved beyond just performing any network transformation or making it just more secure. It is about the architecture is being focused to ensure and to make that the apps are more secure, because the networks are fragmented, and it's opportunity for the attackers to just move laterally. Therefore, a zero trust approach is of a critical nature. It's an asset that how our networks, not only networks, the apps can be more secure and reduce the risk. But if you also have to see that it's a framework, and this framework possesses also some risk and challenges, because it's extremely becoming difficult to maintain it also. Right. The maturity is required is high when you work on this kind of framework, because it's not very old, but it's again a chicken and egg situation that the maturity will only come when you try adopting these frameworks or a zero trust frameworks and vice versa. So all these things have to be considered when we talk about a zero trust framework.
Right, absolutely. And if you can also talk about certain best practices that you implemented, I'm sure you would have done a lot of cloud adoption in this journey, right? So any best practices around the security, cloud security that you can share?
Yeah. So in today's world, I think we all are cognizant of the risk and ensure that there has to be strong security products. We have to have a separate secure network protocols while connecting to the cloud environment, because cloud is kind of becoming inevitable, but we need to secure our networks and the protocols. And in addition, we need to do a regular monitoring for them that, there is no new vulnerability that gets adopted as we do that. See, as the cloud technologies and applications are rising exponentially, and it's posing definitely a risk to the identity, to the data. So, but we need to take a kind of a risk-based strategic approach that how do we do that assessment before we do a migration to the cloud or have a build capability on the cloud. So all that, and both from a application perspective or a cloud provider perspective, and we should understand those threat models before possibly migrating to the cloud. But if those controls are implemented and that strategy is followed from a risk-based perspective and it administered, I think the mitigation is there in place. Then the risk can be controlled, because it's very difficult to say that we'll be in a kind of a zero risk environment, because it can always be the situation. you leave 1% of vulnerability and and you will get compromised. So we will have to put these controls and implement it, and that's how it will enable it.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. And my next question is, what is the current level and the business impact of cyber risks to the organization? I mean, like we've been discussing, there's a lot of digital adoption, cloud security, with a lot of different security solutions being in place. However, what are the current level and business impacts that we can expect or foresee, for the organizations?
Right, Khushbu. Let me put it in a way that, because if you talk about current levels, okay, the global I think the global survey tells that, okay, the cyber security issues in India is one of the most affected countries, actually, where in terms of ransomware, and then surveys were done that, okay, there have been in last 12 to 18 months. Okay. And another study tells that, okay, about I would say 60 to 70% of that organization have to get into that ransom discussion, actually, on their data, right? So largely, if we talk about this complexity, is a new model of operations that we need to really break into, and we have to look into multiple operational threats that include that, and we have to mitigate them through making these technologies as a kind of a standard. How do we ensure that the network designs and are configured properly, network deployments and operations are done properly? So from a technical point of view, I would say that while we have increased the complexities of the system, we have increased the touch points and the handshakes among different application network. We have to strongly look into these aspects of standardization of technologies and networks and deployment. And as I already said, that, okay, we need to ensure that we follow a risk-based approach for our network architecture and configuration. And on top of it, the most important thing I would say, which I have seen personally, how do we build a security culture in our organization or in any organization? And because if that culture is built within the people, then implementing it, any technology or standard becomes very easy.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. My next question is, what are the strategies that can be put in place to prevent the compromise of paying the ransom by blocking threads or before even they attack? So any best practices around that?
So yes, Khushbu. So absolutely, there are best practices, and we operate all our environments operate like 365 a day, 24/7, and we want all best practices to get implemented. But we all do not live in any perfect world, and there's always a situation that we can get compromised. So it's important that, okay, how our systems are more resilient, right? And being said that, okay, the organizations have to work that, okay, that being resilient, they can fight through any adversity, okay, and continue to operate even in a kind of a scale down model. And those resiliency should be more stringent now, given the increase of volume and sophistication of attacks that is happening now, that has not ever happened. So if you see any business leader in the organizations and are really proactively planning that, okay, how they can work on a day-to-day basis with this disruption happening, right? And they are looking into the cyber risk, continue to analyze those risks. And while there is a lot of digital dependency on cloud, but there have been increased regulations, okay, and people are absolutely ensuring that, okay, there should not be a single point of failure within an ecosystem, and on top of it, the kind of a ripple effect can be avoided. So this cyber resilience is a kind of a strategy that everybody is looking holistically. how to implement those standards, guidelines, people, business processes, solutions, and that's why I mean to say frameworks are there. If you talk about NIST frameworks, cybersecurity frameworks, those are there. And then we should also look into that how the recovery should be planned, how innovative it should be, how solution can be implemented in place to isolate the data from the attackers if that really happens, how data is stored in a hardened way in a digital vault, which has the right integrity, confidentiality, and the recovery can be done in a much better way. Unlike we just do it backups or anything, but it has to be designed from considering these modern threats that are happening to these attackers, right? These things becoming very, very important in our life nowadays, and having this resilience strategy is a mandate for all organizations, be it private, government, and see that okay, it can be all while we are in a data-driven world, but all these recovery and resilience is the important factor. I'm reiterating that, which makes you much less vulnerable to the outside threats.
Absolutely. Great. Very well highlighted, Mukul. My last question is, we all know security is a journey, right? I mean, it's something that we keep working on. It's a journey and not a destination. So, my question to you is, what are the security transformation for the coming years, and what are the practices that you are looking at to enable, and what is your thought process around that? So if you can share some highlights.
Yeah, so while I would have reiterated a little bit about that during my discussion, but as I said, that when we talk about security as a whole, we have to look into the three aspects, whether from a data center perspective, from a network perspective, or from an application perspective, right? So while we are adopting a lot of platforms or cloud platforms from a data center perspective and making them more secure, we are looking into our networks and deployment and their configurations. The most important factor, as I said, that now we are also looking from our applications perspective, that okay, how we can make our applications more secure, because ultimately we have to protect the data and make it more into a digital vault kind of a situation. And that's why all these frameworks are coming into play. But these are the three aspects. If we are looking from each and every perspective, I think we should be able to make our systems more resilient and more and less vulnerable to the outside threats.
Great, wonderful insights, Mukul. Thank you so much for joining on the CIO News platform and sharing your thought process, your experience with us, and I'm sure the viewers are going to get great insights. Thank you once again, and it's a pleasure to host you.
Thank you, Khushbu. Thanks for having me here, and you have a wonderful day ahead.
You too.